Kurt Freskowski, Chairman of the Finance Committee. We're going to call to order the Finance Committee meeting on Wednesday, February 15th, 2023. This is an open session meeting, and the meeting of the Air Finance Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of this public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom and Channel 8. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom, meeting ID 860-8777-1519 or calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Anson Nellis, Assistant Town Manager, at 978-772-8220, extension 100. Have a call to order. And the first item on the agenda is we have an amendment. The first item was to review and approve the January 15th meeting minutes. However, they are not complete at this time. However, we do want to step back and approve the minutes to our very first meeting of this Finance Committee, which was on September 28th of 2022. Do we have a motion?
I have to make an amendment to the minutes.
Yes.
It's mainly just fixing the spelling of my last name, but just for the record.
Oh, okay.
On page 1, 2, and 6. That's it.
Okay, so it's...
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Very good.
So I second the motion.
You do second the motion.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We're going to then move on to, we have the Chief Tim Johnston and Jeremy, Deputy Fire Chief. We're going to do a presentation on the fire department. And I'm going to share the screen. I believe this is it here?
Yep.
And I'm going to hand over the controls. Do you want a mouse pad too? Okay. I just want to share with the group that Deputy Chief Jeremy is making the presentation on the fire department budget.
Drag that down to the bottom.
Doesn't matter where I drive it. And can I close this out? Where's that?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I got like in the beginning we get about 10 or 12 slides, just gives you a little presentation on what the fire department, what we do and how it's made up. And then we can get into the budget stuff. Do you wish to stop at each segment, or do you want to give a full presentation and then come back with any questions?
Chief, I would like for you to do your presentation, and then we will, I think we can open it to first comments from the board members, the committee members, thank you. And then we would, we can open it to public comment.
Okay, perfect. That's all I'll do. Sounds great. We're all set if you are.
Very good.
Thanks for having us. Tonight we'll give you maybe 8 or 10 slides on exactly what we do at the fire department, how we're compromised. So this is just a chain of command so everyone knows how the department works. You start at the top with myself and the deputy, and we have an office manager that works a admin Monday through Friday schedule. Then if you go to the left, you'll see that we have 4 groups that work, At any given time, just one of those groups are on duty. So at any given time, you had 4 full-time on-duty personnel. Then after the group number 4, you see the fire prevention lieutenant. He works an admin schedule also. And then finally on the right, we're augmented by the call department.
Drag that up there, maybe. Make it easier. So those all represent the call department's about 19, 17 on call, and that matches about 17 career personnel. That's what you're seeing in those 3 groups. And that's a 24-hour on, 72-hour off rotation, like the chief was saying. It's every 4 days one of these groups is on,
Okay.
and they're made up with, like the titles are, it's 1 captain, 1 lieutenant, 2 firefighters, and then at any point when we get an incident, the off-duty groups as well as the combination company can be called in to assist.
I could call him next, but that's fine. You're probably right. Just some issues that are facing the staffing levels. Of course, the calls never seem to go down. They always seem to be going up. We have simultaneous calls, meaning fire or EMS, a combination of both at the same time that stretches the staff a little thin. We have fewer career staff that lives in the community. Back when I started a few years ago, everybody kind of lived in town. Now that is not always the case. It's probably the norm that they live out of town than they do now. And of course, housing cost drives that. Employees that afford a house, they have moved further and further away. And then we have what used to be call members were always available for calls because they lived here. The training's changed over the last few decades, whether it's several hundreds of hours to become trained, whether it's fire or EMS. They have less time to devote to a commitment of being on the call department. And of course, a lot of them don't work in town anymore, or their jobs don't accommodate them just to respond back for fire calls. That's just a snapshot of our incidents for 2022. We had 820 fire incidents, and you'll see that list to the left with the number at the end of them. I won't read every single one of them, but they go from fire alarms going off to odors of smoke to car wrecks to actual fires, and then a miscellaneous call. So we did 120 actual fire calls. And then over on the right is, you'll see, as I mentioned before, we have a fire prevention lieutenant. And those are some of just a snippet of what he does, but those are actually the permit activity that he's done, amongst other duties that don't require a permit. But as you see, just in his activities, not a total to that number, but you stay quite busy, and he works in conjunction with other town departments, such as the building department, on a regular basis.
And the list you see on the left, it seems kind of weird. Some of them, how they're worded or broken up. That's how it's required for us to report our NFIRS numbers to the to the NFPA. So that's where that comes from.
I said we were going to wait till the end, but I just wanted, and maybe as you go forward, this is just it doesn't break out residential versus commercial or industrial.
Total work.
Okay.
And it's just a call volume broken down by call, hour, and day of the week. On the bottom, you'll see the 24-hour clock. You'll see the early morning hours that it's relatively quiet, and anywhere between, let's say, 10 in the morning, it starts going up till 8 or 10 at night, it gets quiet. So our busiest period is in that time frame. And the day of the week, it's pretty average. Fridays, Saturdays tend to be a little bit busy, but almost equal across the board on that. And this goes to the ambulance side of things. So we had just over 2,000 patient contacts. And the graph down at the bottom, where you'll see what they actually are, from 911 BLS to 911 ALS intercepts, and then along with 911 ALS calls, along with the mutual aid and mutual aid BLS. And then over to the right, as we've said before, that those are our destinations that we go to, and we are predominantly stay in our service area, which is Neshoba Valley Medical Center. We do have to, depending on the patient and what's wrong with them, have to go to certain facilities, but generally speaking, we stay in our service area.
What's null cover?
What's that?
Anything that's not a transport comes back as null.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that could be we got to the scene and we're either canceled by the BLS crew, or we got to the scene and we triaged it back to BLS because it wasn't appropriate for us to do any advanced care. It could be us finding a patient that was not workable in their DOA. Could be refusals. There's a bunch that fall in there. It's essentially any patient that wasn't transported.
So maybe just that if you guys could educate us with the acronyms you're using, so that like I don't
the
exactly.
ALS.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, so
Yeah.
if you're
We can
looking
do
at
that.
the larger ones here, so the 901 BLS is all your basic life support. That's all the basic
Oh,
calls
so
in
BR
the
is a basic life
basic
support.
life support.
Basic,
Town
yeah.
of Air. The ALS Intercept is a advanced life support intercept. So another community provided that basic ambulance, and we went and provided just the paramedic level care on top of that. So that would be your out-of-town calls. The next one to the right, the 911 ALS, is your in-community advanced life support. So that's anytime we did an advanced skill, gave medication, started an IV, used the cardiac monitor, things like that, it is listed as ALS. And then it's the same ALS and BLS for mutual aid, but those are when we were the transport agency. So we can be called to a neighboring community and actually do the transport, not just the intercept.
So basic life support is that your ambulance goes out and provide basic life care.
Basic bandaging, maybe some oxygen, simple medications, aspirin, maybe help assist you with nitro, things like that.
So you need to have a paramedic on those.
To do, so we always staff at a paramedic level. The basic, because that's the way our license run. Our primary ambulance is always at the basic level. It's the distinction between BLS and ALS for us is how much work do they do.
So in each group here, out of the 4 people in the group, is one of them.
Multiple of them now.
Multiple, yeah.
I see. So in each group, there's at least one paramedic.
Yes. Yep. There's always at least one paramedic working.
Generally 2,
Yeah.
sometimes 3, yeah.
So I'm going to make just a quick note that the committee members, I think in the interest of educating ourselves and
Thoroughness.
we'll be
Nope.
maybe jumping in with a few, we'll try to make the questions
No,
quick.
that's more than fair, and like I said, that's why we brought up these, to make sure you understand the fire department.
So, and I think the one, thank you, Jen. So in the fire department group, these fellows are persons are trained not only in the fire, but then you're saying we have paramedics
They're cross-trained.
cross-trained
Correct,
in
yep.
this.
So the contract requires us all to be at least basic EMTs. The town's hired only basic since the 70s.
So basically, everybody is.
Everybody is
Yeah.
at least a basic EMT.
I
Out of the, 19 full-time
19, there's
staff,
only 4.
there's only 3 basic EMTs left and 1
Yeah,
intermediate.
Yeah,
So
and
there's
the rest are all higher level.
rest are all paramedics.
paramedics.
Oh, that's higher level than
Yep.
basic unit.
Yeah, we've only hired
Yes.
paramedics for the last probably 15 years.
Almost
more.
20, since
Almost
2004.
20. Yeah.
I see.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and it's a good note, though, that we do run the advanced level. That's what we're licensed at. You just depends on what the care is when you arrive. So it's a good
Yep.
question. Did you have anything more on the call volume part? You good?
No,
Okay.
no.
Go to that next one.
So that's that same breakout that you saw earlier, with the days of the week and the 24-hour clock. This is just for the EMS side. So the weeks are about the same, and it has the same pattern. It starts sometime late in the morning. For us, shift change is 6:30 in the morning. So down when presumably when we're at some of our slowest hours, and that lets us get through shift change, and that all the personnel have to do all the daily checks, and then we're into the busier hours of the day.
As everybody or may not be aware, we were awarded a SAFER grant just about a year and a half ago. So that, as it states, the SAFER is an acronym for Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response. That grant was for just under $1 million, which paid for hiring the additional 4 firefighters that we now have to make 4 groups of 4. As I said, it assists with the number of firefighters in the community to meet the industry standard, which is 4 on the fire apparatus. As we do now during our grant, we must demonstrate increased compliance with NFPA 1710 or 1720, which is the deployment standards for firemen. Turning out is when you respond to a call, is what turnout means. And that's a 3-year program with no local match, covering the salary and benefit packages. And I'll get in later on in the budget where there is added cost that we did add into the budget last year, but that's addressed as we get to the budget part. And the goal of the SAFER grant is to achieve faster response times.
Yeah, fast response, and it was the conversation initiated, several years ago through negotiations with the firefighters union, trying to improve firefighter safety. The ability to put 4 bodies on that truck is just much more efficient than what we were staffing at as 3. It lets us cover, certainly more calls, but when they're all deployed together, it's a much more efficient process.
This is just a snapshot of that just under $1 million that the town received, and how it's broken down first year, second year, and third year, and then how the town would pay for them come year number 4.
The only thing to note on the years is it's not fiscal or calendar. It runs on a grant, and so it's when it was awarded. It's based on so many days after that award. So that our grant year actually starts February 12th, so we'll have 3 years cycling from that date.
So then is
So
this,
how you finish
We
3?
just finished year 1. We just began year 2.
Oh, I see. So we have some time to adjust to this.
What do you mean adjust?
I mean, so if the town has to foot the bill after
Oh,
3
right,
years,
yes,
yeah,
we'll have
yes.
some time to think.
Yes.
Yeah, so some of it will be added in starting last year up through FY25, and then, as he said, in February, we'll have them all from February to the end of June for a little chunk, and then I think it was in 27,
Yeah.
we will have all of them will come on board.
Yeah, this
So it is in little snippets. We
gives the
do,
town
but-
about 4 years, and then last year at town meeting they set aside some money, hopefully to use for year 4.
so this second year is beginning 2/12/2023.
Correct.
Now this looks a little bit different than the draft you see that and with the blue lines before you. I thought this would be more helpful. This is what we submitted, just breaks it down a little bit better, where the numbers are more condensed for accounting purposes. So if you like, Mr. Chairman, I'll just go down each one and address each one, and then if you have any comments at the end, does that work for you?
Yes. Thank you.
So as you look at that, the first one will be the fire department salaries. That includes the non-union, just the chief and the deputy chief and the chief's position. And the fire department wages would be the union salaries and all the stipends, and that would be contractually adjusted for the number that you see there. The next one would be the on-call personnel. So this would be the call department people. So what we do for that is they have an average of about $20.63 an hour. They're given a step increase every year, and then we wait to see what the select board adjusts for a COLA. So they get both a step and whatever the COLA is, and that average right now to this year to date is about $20.63 an hour.
So, sorry if I could
Uh-huh.
interrupt 1 second. What are your different columns? What do they need?
Past years, I must have cut off the header when I copied and pasted it.
So
So this is,
it's not just 1 year, because the first column,
Yeah.
the second
Yeah,
column, then
no.
the middle one, like the fourth column number is much smaller, so that cannot be 1 year salary.
no,
One
so
number.
this is going backwards. I must have cut off the header when I moved it. Let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, so that last column is the FY24 request. Yeah, starting with the 268, so that's the requested amount is 524.
So the first, all the way to the right, after the yellow dots, is your FY24 request. Your next one is the actuals from FY23.
Yep.
And then all the
And then it's
columns.
FY23's request.
Yep.
And then it's FY22 actual, 21
Yeah,
actual, 20 actual, and it going backwards.
It seemed to me that if I count the columns from the right,
Yeah.
so the not the your notes column,
Mhm.
the first column, the 268,000 something.
Yeah.
So that's FY24, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
And
what's
then the
re-
next column to the left is FY23.
that's the actuals in 23,
Yeah.
correct?
And then the
Yep.
next column after that. That seems to be the breakdown of it, but I can't help me out this. The like the next three columns is 74,000, 74, 73. And those were similar, and then there's one that's
So
only 14.
there was a change.
Yeah, they changed the.
There was a change in accounting.
Yep.
Ah,
And that's why you see the numbers that change from one column to the other. They just change their
so
accounting
like
process.
instead of accounting from say January to January, maybe they start next year.
No,
like
I think it was
a
like
few months. That's a few months salary, right? It's like a 14,000. Yeah, that column. So
Yeah,
that's
so
it was
this
just
one-
an accounting process. They
Yeah.
changed. They
Okay,
transposed
okay.
the two, the
All right,
wages and
whatever.
salary. Yeah.
okay. So basically, we are looking at different columns going back almost 10 years now.
It's just no, it only goes
Goes
back
back
to
to
17.
Oh,
It's just the
17.
worksheet we use. So if you look, all we're looking at is for the FY24 request, that last
This-
column. Yep.
This last
Okay.
one is
Okay.
what this year is.
Yep.
All right.
So you good with that on-call one? Then the fire department
That is the
overtime. We actually
I
have
see.
that next sheet. If you want to look at that, we can just go over the overtime sheet. It's actually broken out on how we get there.
You good with that one? Just
Yeah.
Okay, it's a couple pages on it, okay.
I can go over that one if you want. That's just, did you have that one there, Jeremy? I think it is, yeah.
Overtime's
Yep,
next
so that's,
one.
Yeah.
It's a couple pages.
Yeah.
gotta just got them out of order.
okay. And then you see, so we end up with a sheet, but that's how we get there is, you'll see how that is broken down to come up. We end up having, we average out our hourly rate, which is at 6106. That's a little on the low side right now because we have 4 newer employees that are at the lower rates. But if you get down and just, there'll be the reasons for the OT coverage in the left-hand column. And as you see, they're all broken down by hours. And then they'll use the average and then come up with that figure. I won't read them all unless you have a question on it. But all the hours are broken down. Sick time is an average. And then most of them are actuals for, like we cover employees for training. The only thing that's not, or the lower part that's not contractual is, say, officers' meetings, and it's in the 90 percentile of what's actually contractual on the overtime side. But that's how we end up with our, it's broken down by hours and overtime rate to come up with that overtime budget of 393, 129.76.
So when you said here the percent of overtime, is that you had a budget for overtime and this is what actually happened?
No, the percentages, if you went through the contract and listed out all the dollars that are required by the contract, 97% of that 393 is contractual. Only 3% of that 393 is optional.
Yeah, so optional would be like officers' meetings if we
So-
met with
so,
all the officers. or-
I guess I'm still trying to understand is that contractual, like the contract that
So the-
obligated you to work a certain amount of overtime?
No, so the contract requires that we have 4 personnel on duty every day.
Uh-huh.
So any time that somebody misses an hour from work, we have to replace it with an hour of overtime.
I see, I
So
see.
anytime there's a sick day, it's 24 hours of overtime.
I see.
Anytime there's a vacation day, it's 24 hours overtime. Like today there was somebody out on training. He missed 10 hours going to the academy, and he's granted 2 of those days a year by the contract. We backfill that 10-hour period with overtime because we have to maintain the 4 personnel on duty all the time.
So you're basically saying that the overtime is that there's no way you can
There's
get
yeah, there's
around
not there's not a lot of optional hours used.
I see.
It's all negotiated.
I'll go back to that budget, Jeremy.
That explanation.
You want the whole budget? This one?
Yeah. Yep. So back to the training overtime, which is the next line item. That is increased by $5,000, which is also contractual, that's what it would be increased during the duration of the 3-year contract. So that goes up by $5,000 every year. The services line item, we have a breakout sheet on that, and it just shows you what that line item has for, or what it is included in that. So it's anything from vehicle maintenance to pump test on the fire apparatus, ladder test. It takes care of our SCBA, station compressor, phone. So it's just things of that nature.
Most of these are also required. So the lines you see for the vehicle maintenance and the pump testing, that's all NFPA requirements. We're obligated yearly to test the pumps to prove they work. You know, the IT maintenance, the bricks, that's all equipment that we use for our fire reporting. The Comcast, the internet that uses that, the air tanks, the hydro testing, that's all required by NFPA. You know, so it's the hydro test on the air cylinders.
And what
the
is
breathing.
And what was the acronym?
The NFPA is the National Fire Protection.
Okay.
So
Excellent. Yeah.
they set the standards.
And I'm guessing if it's anything like business, we have to meet those standards to get various fundings.
Yeah, NFPA is kind of unique. They don't have any enforcement power. They're a consensus standard that you are driven to adhere to based on if anybody was ever injured or killed. Mm-hmm. That's what they're going to hold you to.
Yeah. But no, in other words, outside entities looking at us would say, "Are you meeting NFP standards?"
Yes, for our grants in that type of funding, we have to attest to it.
Yeah, that's the backbone of the SAFER grant. Yeah, and most of the increase here is like just over $2,600. It's just, as we know, everything seems to cost more. Air testing's gone up, pump testing, it's all. So it was a subtle increase at $2,600. Services, I think is that the office supplies? That line was omitted. So we're down to, did I miss supplies, Jeremy?
Nope.
Yeah. Is that a breakout on supplies? Yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have one.
So we don't have a breakout on supplies.
Yeah, you have
It
a
actually
decrease.
it actually went down.
Yeah, the supplies went there.
Other charges and expenses. This is where it increased to the union contract was some education reimbursement. The language was changed, and that had an increase. Turnout gear, which is at $5,000. We were lucky enough to get some turnout gear during COVID for some COVID money at the time, so that we were able to drop that number down to 5,000. We thought we could do maybe 5 years at 5,000. It used to be up to 15. So I think maybe one more year we can stay at that $5,000 with turnout gear. We're finding that, like anything, we ordered gear last May or June. It's not in yet. So that's what we're finding, that with most things, it takes a long time to get them once we order it.
So the only other explanation we had was the chief touched on this. The overtime rate's been going up, and it's partly because of this education. We did a quick analysis of where our employees were as far as years of service compared to what we require of education and training. So I went and looked back at 13. At 2013, back then we had 13 employees. We averaged about 17 and a half years of service. We would have had, out of that group of employees, 6 associate's degrees, 3 bachelors. 5 would have been basic EMTs, 3 advanced EMTs, and 5 paramedics. And then as the towns continue to transition, rolling over employees through retirement, we've seen a reduction in the number of fire incidents. So to offset that, and we've watched years of service walk out the door with all that knowledge, and to continue to offset that, we've increased the amount of training we're trying to do to keep our people competent and efficient. So if you compare it to the 2022, we're up to 19 employees. Well, our average years of service dropped to 12.3. So to offset that, you see the rise in, the associate's degrees are down to 4, but the bachelor's is up to 7 now. And there's 2 now with masters. You've also transitioned from, just the 5 paramedics up to the 14. Our advanced EMT is down to 1. Our basic is actually down to, it's 4. Excuse me, I said 3 earlier. It's 4. So that transition drives our overtime rate, because as these employees pick up these higher degrees and the advanced certifications, they're paid more according to the contract. And that trend for us, at least in the years of service, you'll see it continue. The projection is you'll see by 2027, if we stay at 19 employees, we'll probably drop to just under 10 years of average years of service. But we'll continue to offset the education with, by then it's projected we'll have about 7 employees out of that 19 with master's degrees. All 18 will be paramedics, just through attrition.
Yeah, this is the one thing I have kind of like trying to figure out, because I think the town's police department has a similar situation that they're getting a much younger group of people. But generally speaking, so is your overall cost in terms of personnel higher with younger people? Or because I was thinking that with younger people, you probably the starting salary is lower, right? But you're saying that they need more training. So then when they go for training, then you need to fill them in with overtime. So
Right.
then overtime cost goes up. So overall, in your opinion, is it like to the department budget-wise, does it actually cost more to have younger staff than older staff? Or what's your feeling?
My first thought is like you can have them at the top end of the salary scale, like say back in 13 and 22, and now by the time 27 comes around, you kind of reverse that, where they're not as educated perhaps,
Yeah.
and now you'll get them under 10 years of service,
Yeah.
but they'll be better educated with less time on the job, but their salaries probably will be slightly elevated only because they've been there 10 years, so they probably at the top steps on whatever rank they're at.
So they're
But not everybody's like that, excuse me.
So-
Depending
so
on when they were hired.
They're younger but better educated.
Yes.
And so they
Yes.
probably came in with a higher
start.
salary.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So even though they don't have as many years of experience, their salary probably is not much lower than their previous retired firefighters.
I'd agree with that. When we replace captains, all of our ranks, so there's a firefighter, lieutenant, and captain, they all take about 5 years to hit top step. They're all in 5-year increments. The firefighter it's three years of movement, and then there's an off year, and then on your 5th year, they can hit the top step if they have a degree. The lieutenants are the same way. It's 4 years of incremental increases. The captains have 4 years of increases, and when they hit their 5th year, if they have a degree, they can hit their 5th step. So in that 5-year window, do you save a little bit? Yeah, potentially, but as we may lose a senior employee that's a basic EMT, well, they're being replaced with a paramedic. And so that basic EMT is being paid a lower percentage on their wage than that paramedic is. So it's kind of an offset now. It's probably pretty equal. I've never sat down and done the actual dollars and cents to it, but I bet you it's pretty equal.
But then the younger people, even though they're better educated, they still need special training. So they still will go on more.
Yeah,
So then you are looking at your overtime budget could be increasing.
Our training costs are way up today compared to what they were 20 years ago. And it's not just the rollover, because it's all the other mandates that we have to have. So, as an example, a paramedic requires 35 hours.
Yep. Research.
35 hours of research versus a basic
Every year?
Every 2, versus a basic is 20. And it advances in the middle at 25.
And you may have just seen on the news how Nero's law was, put into effect, and a lot of us aren't compliant. It's a unfunded training mandate where everyone in the department needs 3 hours of training.
3 hours every 2
it's
years.
something. So it's a new law, but we didn't have that in the budget. So they're giving us up to a year to, get that in line. So those are the things we face. That
Yeah, and you see others, the mandate is coming, the training's been rolled out for a year or 2 now, being like Asher, so it's the active threat environment training. You'll see that we'll have to deal with that over the coming years. Adding that, we deal with some of it now in house. We probably train maybe just under a third of our employees every year in it,
and
trying to keep up with it. So we were a little ahead of the curve as far as the state mandating that portion. But it seems every year they're adding something that we have to do for training. So our training budget has just continually increased.
Talk about the budget then, unless you have anything else. The last thing there is you see to the far right, that was $7,500. That is not actually included in the adjustments for this year. That's actually a one-time buyout. One of our captains is retiring, and that comes out of a different account. So that money's there, but it's kind of removed out of the budget. So what we're going to do is just move that over to the comment section, like we did for the non-safer grant costs. It's there, but it's not listed in the $2.2 million budget. So that, and the last thing is, as I talked about, we had non-safer grant costs. Last year we had an amount, if you look back to the column to the left, just over $96,000. And this year we're at 106, so that's an additional cost of $94.80. And that's not broken out because of the accounting purposes. It's in where the wages and where it's appropriately put into each category. But the additional non-safer grant cost this year was $9,480.
And those are driven by the same things we talked about. That's, holiday overtime. It may be their education. So when we apply for the grant, you're required to apply for on averages. So we can apply for the whole salary, an average of the options that we offer for healthcare. And I think we've managed to cover our share of that. But what you can't cover is things like, since we've hired some of these employees, they've gone out and got certifications. The contract requires them to be paid for those certifications, so there's a few $100s each there. Some of that is education, and one of them has a college degree.
No, do firefighters or captains or all the fire department staff, do they choose what they get certified, or do they only go to get certification that you require them to?
So, so there's no requirement in the Commonwealth for a firefighter to be certified. It's the weirdest thing, but it's strong. We strongly encourage all of our employees to do it just because of what it does for us for training. It guarantees us that they have the prerequisite knowledge. And to be honest, you can't get through without being certified, because for you to take any of the classes offered at the academy, you have to go get that initial firefighter 1 and 2 certification.
So how many different kind of certifications do they need?
A lot.
Basic fireman, like there's firefighter 1 and firefighter 2, and pretty much everyone comes out being a firefighter 2, and it's just basic knowledge of firefighting. There's not too many. We have 2 or newer call members, but other than that, pretty much everybody tends to go through either the call volunteer side, where they go 2 nights a week and every other weekend for probably 4 months. But it sets the standard, so everybody that goes to a fire, let's say, knows how to put up a ladder to the side of the building, how to pull out, so everybody knows what to do. And then once they get back to the departments, we can teach them the more advanced training, how we do certain things in air and stuff like that. But it just gets the baseline for training.
So I saw that they would have this level of knowledge when they were hired. Do they need? I saw that they were getting some new certificates after they have being on the job. Is that?
Yeah. So like an example would be the firefighter 1 and 2 would be your initial, right? That'd be the first in the door. We're going to teach you the basics, how to get dressed, how to use your equipment, how to put out fires. And then the next step for a lot of these guys, and it's listed out in their contract, they can go get certifications to be fire officers, and that will teach them some basic management skills. It'll teach them more like organizational type activities. There's a 40-hour online component in a week-long class to go take to get it, and they have to test out of the program to show that they have firefighter 1 or fire officer 1. They can go take fire officer 2, fire officer 3.
So are those optional, that they take initiative to take those classes themselves, but you don't require them to do that?
So it's optional in the sense that if they want to stay a firefighter, yes. As soon as they want to make rank, if they want to be promoted, it's required of them to go get those certifications to be promoted to lieutenant.
Okay.
And there's another whole list that they need to access to be promoted to captain.
Yeah. So they can manage their schedule to decide when they go to take those classes to get certified.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
yeah.
then, okay, but then they work out the schedule with the department, and then they go to take classes. Now while they're out, then you hire someone else, or you call some other people in to fill in.
Yeah.
Correct.
And as overtime.
Yep.
Okay.
It's limited, like, they do training on their own also. If they want advancement, they can go get stuff on their own, but we have they're each granted 2 training days.
I see. So
yeah,
you
a
would
fiscal
only allow.
year.
So it's not like someone who wants to get a lot of on-the-job training.
No.
They can go.
No,
Because
they're
then they take a
limited.
lot of
They're
time
limited
off.
to the number of
I
hours.
see.
They can
yes.
go on their days off as much
Yeah.
as they want.
There is a limit of hours.
The town only compensates them for 2 training days a year.
I see.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I just
No?
need to know this basics.
No, that's
That's a
great.
very good question. I am going to just interject real quickly. So we're pretty much down at the bottom line of the budget here.
Yep.
And then we're going to move on to, and I'm just watching our time a little bit.
Yep. So-
And then we'll move on to the last part, the emergency management.
Sounds great.
Presentation.
So just so everyone knows, so that the final number there, the 2.290,191.05 reflects a 4% increase on the fire department budget for the year.
I have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the 22 actual wages,
Mm-hmm.
which is what, 1.43 million,
Yep.
and then the 23 requested is 1.46 million. So I assume you assumed you're gonna
Yeah,
have some
there
extra
must have been an
increase.
adjustment. I don't have an explanation for that.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. And then the
Um,
actual is actually
43.
150,000 less in actual. Is that just
I think
less overtime than you anticipated, or you have no idea?
I think they adjusted some accounting issues when we got a new accountant, is
Okay.
what my best guess
And
is,
that's
because some
that.
of them got moved around.
Okay, that's that note adjusted for salaries and stipends. Because I'm not even counting 24. I'm just looking at
Yeah.
23 and actual and requested. Okay. I assume the salaries go down, either someone left and you hired someone new, but that.
Yep, so
that
they do
didn't-
adjust,
Yeah.
quite a bit. And back then, we did lose lieutenant, so things would have adjusted. You know, the new person would go to bottom step, the new firefighter would go to bottom step, so they do adjust, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, I can go over that. The next one is the emergency management budget, which is pretty straightforward.
Yes.
I can just run down those lines. The top one is the stipend I receive as the emergency management director. Services include, it's increased due to the Code Red. Code Red is what we use for public announcements on the town's website here. It's used amongst all the town departments. Supplies remain the same. And, you know, there's other charges and expenses at 100 for a total budget of 23,640.
Which is the same.
Yeah, pretty easy.
1% increase. Okay.
And the last one is the ambulance budget enterprise fund. Is that one up there, Jeremy? Yeah. So we can go, as you go down that one, and I think, is there a slide for that before the indirect cost, Jeremy?
It's after
I just want to go to the
services, and it just gives you in
Do you actually have the budget one?
Mm-hmm.
Can I see that one first? How about the ambulance one?
No.
No, okay. The ambulance, the vehicle repair, that zeroed out a while ago. The ambulance service, we actually have a breakout for that. Can you go to that service one first, Jeremy, since that's the first one?
Sure.
We have a breakout for that one and how it is. And this one actually we've been working on, it was never broken out like this, and we sat down over the recent weeks and broke it down. And it's actually, we're gonna look to have that amended. Because right now it's at 50,730, but with the way we broken out, because that, can you scroll to the bottom? Is there a number?
It's right there, 50,730.
Yeah, so that's what it's at now, and we ended up having some changes where it's gonna have to increase around 11,000 and change. What we found is that as we've gone through that, the increases on services for the ambulance budget, most directly was the actual for, we've done more calls, so there's more billing costs involved, and we average about $2,000 in billing per month, and we budgeted about 19, and that goes along with the way we educate our EMS staff. There was some contractual reimbursements that come out of the services line, so that one, the history isn't up there, but we haven't increased that in 4 years. It's been around that $50,000 mark. So as we broke it down, as you see here, we ended up with about 62,357.08 is which we were gonna look for the finance team for an adjustment on that.
Yeah, we've looked at some of the contracts that are covered under this, like the Stryker.
Yeah,
They're the ones that, it's the company that comes out and does the preventative maintenance on our cots, our power loads, the Lucas devices, the CPR machines, our monitors. The state says we have to have them checked every year and maintained, by a licensed company, and those costs have been going up. So we've been trying to get into longer-term contracts. As we can get a 3-year contract, it doesn't save us any money up front, but it locks in that price then over that term.
And then if we get down to medical and surgical supplies, we're actually gonna, we had some subtle increases since 2020, but as everyone knows, everything's gone up, and we originally asked in the budget for 5, but we don't think that's gonna be enough, so we asked for an increase of 10%, so that would change to, we had already had the 5% built in, but we'd ask for another 5%, so that would be 50,242. And those are the only 2 changes that we have that were different than what we submitted.
And then you have the indirect cost.
Yep. And then the next one we have to show you is our indirect cost and how we end up with that, because that's the biggest chunk of the enterprise fund. So that breaks it down quite a bit. So rather than having just that one number, 378, so part of my salary, the deputies, fire permits, it depends how much we just did this, 2 years ago. The adjustments on the salaries, they were a little different, so we sat down with the town accountant and we've adjusted, and we felt pretty comfortable with where they're at now. So anybody that spends time or doing something for the ambulance, a portion of their salary will come out of the indirect cost, including the wages of the firefighters, captains, and the majority is the firefighters are actually on the ambulance. And then regular overtime, we estimate a percentage of time that they spend on the ambulance based on the calls, the time, as the amount of calls that we have. And then the rest is down to some insurance. We take some utilities out of that, cost between the accountant and treasurer, and the fuel. And then we come up with that 378. And the latter half of the ambulance budget, we have an operating reserve fund, which is $15,000, which is just in case, it's a reserve in case we need to do anything with that, in case we run close, which we are this year. And the finance manager fills in almost at the end of the budget cycle, the short-term interest payments, principal payments and interest, and the interest and long-term debt. And that concludes the ambulance budget.
Yeah, that doesn't get done close to time year.
Yeah. Yeah. So he has the debt amount if we need it, but those get done towards the end of the year. And I think the last part of the enterprise fund, as you see up there, we ended up, we put a slide together on what the revenue has been. I think we've done a good job recently over the last 12 months, let's say, at trying to make the revenues more steadily. A lot of that has to do with the paperwork that needs to get done by the crew that's in the ambulance, and we've done better at that. And certainly we've increased the call volume too, so that would indicate, the revenue's going up too. So we're just shy of like the 500. Yeah, is that 10? I think it's 10. It should be 500s, right? 100,000
Which one are you looking at?
to the left.
Yeah, it's in thousands.
Yeah. So
So your total expenses
Yeah.
is 489,384, and your total income is the
yep.
475,863. So the orange line is your expense, the blue is your income.
Okay.
So I guess my final thought on, for me anyways, for the enterprise fund, certainly the revenues affect what has to come out of the tax levy. So I think last year was probably the best year where we've had great revenues, and we only had 63,103 come out of the tax levy as of last year. So as long as we maintain that revenues, it'll be less on the tax levy out of the enterprise fund.
So so what I'm seeing is that if this is approximately at 14,000 less here, so in other words, the 489 versus the 475.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. So that's about a 14,000.
Yeah, and we've adjusted some of that this year already, meaning to meet those additional costs that we may come close to, because we can only use what the town has authorized.
Right.
So sometimes, and this year will be one of those, the last 4 months here will be kind of slim, where we might not get 10 of something, where we might get 6 of something, for ambulance supplies and things like that. Because there's fixed costs, such as billing costs that come in every month. We pay for a phone line. And we've run closer to what we've been, that's why we've decided to go back and look a little bit more based on where we're at this year.
The problem we've run into when you say look at this graph is that it's not like, say, the solid waste, where you sell a trash bag or you buy a trash bag, you pay for a trash bag. We get an ambulance call, there's no guarantee we're getting paid or what the volume of that payment is. Medicare sets the rates for Medicare patients. There's a certain population that we end up writing off after, I don't know how many, what's it sit on the...
Yeah, we do it 3 years now.
After 3 years. So it's, I don't want to say it's impossible, but we can't balance the expense to the income necessarily, month to month.
Yeah.
Just because it's a public service and it's not a business, so I can't limit to who I offer an ambulance to.
Yeah, so your total income is essentially, you're gonna assist people at a scene, and then you said, I used an IV bag and I used a whatever,
Yeah,
and then that all ends up in a medical bill.
Yep.
And presumably between insurance and Medicare and all those people, you get a check back.
Yes.
Yeah, they also actually, because my family actually had used the ambulance service, so I actually know that even if they transport my husband from my house to Neshiva Medical Center, which is like 2 miles, they charge me $2,000. So that's their rate, like if you use the ambulance. So, but they say that like some people, they may be able to write it off, say that, if but I actually pay the whole bill. But if you don't, then but they were counting on that as their income.
It's
so
like a classic medical debt.
So,
yeah.
so the
it's kind of
important,
like that.
the important takeaway from this is, and I just got this number today, so we always have income for the ambulance, and the enterprise fund just kind of offsets the cost to operate the ambulance. So as of last year, the 62% of our runs were Medicare. That's a fixed number, well below what you or I would pay if we have regular insurance. So 62% of those are fixed. If it's basic, I don't have the rate in front of me, but it's a lot lower than if somebody has insurance than the other 38% that have insurance. So more than half is already a fixed number, which is much lower than what you would expect. And the other 38%, well, they could have insurance, they might be self-pay, they might have no insurance at all.
That's a delayed return, right? So if you did an ambulance run today, you have to go through the billing cycle, and
That's a good point.
If you get paid, you won't see that money for
It's usually a couple months, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
And then if you have paperwork issues, you might have to chase them a little bit, but yeah.
Who does the paperwork?
Coastal, we have a billing company, they're really good to work with, yeah. They're really good.
And that's the 2,000.
Yeah, about a month. They get so much per bill that they send out. Yeah, and it's the average is about 2,000. We just looked at that, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good. Well, Chief, thank you very, very much.
And Deputy Chief.
And Deputy Chief, yes. committee members, are you done with your presentation?
Perfect. Thank you.
And you would be available for some questions
All
from
right,
the
yeah.
public?
I have one more.
And
So
yes.
this 489, right, to your point, doesn't actually look that far from the 475, which is significantly less than the 63,000.
Yeah, you
last
mean
year.
that we paid
Yeah.
on the, yeah. So Barbara, correct me if I'm wrong, I know when you look at revenues, it's at an 80 percentile, it's not our total revenue, correct? When you
Well-
figure out the enterprise fund?
And also those numbers were for 2022.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The 63,000 was for fiscal 23.
Yep,
So that.
Got it.
okay. Thank you.
All right, how do I go back?
Oh,
Stop share. Okay.
I will take the proverbial mouse. So what I'm going to suggest to the committee members is that the next item on the agenda was a discussion of the budget for 2024. I am going to, I don't know if we need to vote on it, but Andrew, I'll maybe depend on your parliamentary skills here. But what I'm going to suggest is that we move beyond that and move right to public comments in the interest of time.
Yep, you can just do that.
We could just do that. Okay.
I would like to think that we covered discussion while he was going, so.
Okay, very good. All right, well then what I would like to do then is to open our meeting to public comments. Is there anyone that would like to have any questions or comments? You can raise your hand or,
We have no physical numbers, that would be.
there's no one in the room that I see. Is there anyone on Zoom that would have any questions at this time? Comment? Okay, seeing none, I will note that public comments have been offered and none, we have no public comments at this time. Is there anything else that the committee members would like to discuss?
I don't think so. To reaffirm that we have a meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, so that would be what time, Andrew?
That was March 1st.
Let me see, I have notes here also. As I wave paper into the microphone. March 1st, 6 p.m., I've got a note. Sound it?
Yep. According to the preliminary minutes, March 1st at 6 p.m. with the police chief.
Yes, okay, so that will be, our next meeting will be March 1st, 6 p.m., and with the police department would be doing a presentation on their budget.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I second the motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. So moved and voted. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.